Hello and welcome to another episode of CX Voices. I am Katie Kemshell. We're filming today for CXM magazine and I'm joined today by the brilliant Jason Bradbury. Jason, welcome.
Hi, Katie. Great to be here. I'm so excited.
So
I'm
excited.
so excited to be here. It's 90 degrees here in Cornwall, and I'm still sat here loving every second of it. Really looking forward to it.
So the reason I'm so excited is because we're doing a bit of a quirky conversation tonight
Right.
around the death of the television industry and how the decline of this industry is directly related to not listening to the customer, to not necessarily even realizing that customer experience, if not put at the center of an industry, will literally lead to the decline of an entire industry. And from my perspective, who better to lead that conversation than yourself? So that's where we're going. But just give us a little bit of an update before we get into the exciting stuff on where you are at in 2026. What are you up to?
Okay, Casey, having left television, where I worked for the best part of 25 years, about, oh goodness, I don't know, 15 years ago, my 2026 now allows me to do anything I want to do in the amazing new world of a kind of independent media, film and content production. And as you know, because you are a big part of it, your whole family are a big part of it, I'm about to release an independently funded feature film, a comedy set in Skegness, where all good British comedies are set, about a bunch of nutcases trying to use 80s computers to fight an AI that's gone rogue. So it's a lot of fun, but it is very much exemplary of the kind of trend that you're talking about, the move away from mainstream media to little silos of independently funded and also sort of politically diverse content, but be it news stations, podcasts, obviously, YouTube, or movies, or you name it, or even the new kind of vertical episodic series that are becoming very popular on platforms like Instagram, and I'm sure we can get into that more. But I'm doing the movie, and when I say I'm doing the movie, oh my goodness, every day, edit. You can see I'm surrounded by speakers. You might not be able to see, but I've got speakers all around me. There's a cable just there. And I've got this 5.1 surround sound set up because I'm having to do the 5.1 surround mix myself, because the true democratization of media has happened. We now own the printing press, as you know, because you're sat there in your front room, I guess. I don't know where you are. And and it's incredible. So yeah, the movie's happening. And I continue to do my job, my day job, which is talking about AI, which is sort of kind of how we met, isn't it? In a roundabout sense. So I talk to companies about AI. So big, annual AGMs and get-togethers. I'm one of the keynote speakers. That's what that is. But obviously that's been put to one side so I can finish off this gargantuan project that's been the center of my creative world for 2 years.
So you started off in television. You've now somehow migrated to creating your own kind of independently funded movies.
Yeah.
You're interested in AI. How do we bring all of that together in terms of just thinking about, like, you've been on this incredible journey. Viewers will know you as somebody that started off in the center of British television, and yet here you are in a world talking about AI, talking about the changes, and at the same time making your own movie. Tell me about how you see the relevance of the changes in the way that customers experience television.
Yeah.
Taken you on that journey through from where you were to where you are now. I know it's something that you're quite passionate about.
Very much so.
Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, when you and I talked about doing this, I told you that I was very privileged. It was just when I'd left the Gadget Show, which most people know me for, which I did for 12 years. And I was very privileged to be asked to do a speech at Lincoln University, or the University of Lincoln, in their film TV media production department. And the top, the topic that I chose was television is dead. So I couldn't be more relevant to the theme that you're exploring. And again, there's so much to talk about there, not least the fact that I've done hundreds of TV shows, Katie. And I don't mean episodes. I mean, I've probably done 100 different shows. So, you know, the Gadget Show, and then stuff on Discovery and on Bravo and BBC One. I did a big game show on BBC One on Saturday nights, and the Big Breakfast, and loads of youth TV, the Sunday Show on BBC Two, and I mean, and countless science programs and stuff all across digital, as it was back then. The first sort of iterations of the BBC steps into the digital world, when they kind of diversified their offering a little bit. And tons of radio, and now podcasts, and as we've already discussed, independent media. So I do feel I'm equipped to talk about it, not least because when I came out of university, where I'd studied film and television at the University of Bristol, my first, or sort of not my first job, but around about my third job, my first job was at Channel 4 as a script writer, strangely enough, for a youth drama. But about a year or two later, I ended up applying for and getting a place on the very coveted BBC production training scheme. And I think the BBC are a really interesting example based on what you're trying to get at, this notion of customer service, right? And I'll tell you why. So I started in the heart of the establishment, and I was effectively free to any TV show as one of the trainees in a trainee producer. So what that meant was that they would welcome me with open arms. Yeah, come and work on our show, because they're getting someone who's been vetted and who's supposed to be quite good at coming up with stuff and whatever. And they get you for 6 months for free. So I chose to work in children's television. So I worked on Going Live or Live and Kicking, the Saturday morning show, which you might remember, with Emma Forbes and Andy Peters. And and I also worked in science for a while, where they were kind of looking for what they were going to find as a replacement for Tomorrow's World, and my advice was very clear and not very well received, which was bring it back. And I also worked in the youth television department, which was very big at sort of 6 o'clock on BBC Two, if you remember, back in the day. And I helped to bring to the screen a show called The Sunday Show, which launched many careers, including my mate David Walliam's career when he was early in his career as a comedian. But customer service, I think what's happened, I'm going to throw you a big kind of grenade right now. I think the BBC in particular forgot that they're actually looking after customers. I think their ignorance of what it means to be all but forced to pay a license fee is almost impossible to comprehend. The arrogance in that institution, I think, over the years has been extraordinary. And you can ask me what I mean by that. It is a very subjective opinion, and it definitely doesn't mean that I don't think that what the BBC outputs is, for the most part, actually extraordinary. I mean, the natural history, the drama, maybe the current affairs. The news is a whole other ballgame. They're so partisan, they're so soaking wet on the left side of the political debate, and I'm politically wet myself, meaning I sit right in the middle. I'll lean one way depending on one issue and the other way depending on another issue. So don't look to me to be making a political point here. I'm not. I just feel that the BBC are not objective enough when it comes to certain types of hot political potatoes, and it's kind of their job, and they have to be. And also in their dramas as well, they've kind of gone down a pretty woke route, which I think is now revealing itself as problematic. Let me put it that way. So that's me. You may disagree, and that's the beauty of this whole debate, by which I mean people listening and watching this podcast. But that's my view, and I think when you lose sight of the customer in any business, even in a small way, things start to rack up. You know, my dad always used to say to me, he was a salesman, he was evangelistic about the customer is always right. And it's a very beautiful idea, really. It's a very humble idea, which I'm guessing, Katie, with your Christian background, you'll be in tune with. It's about giving, and when you give, you end up receiving. And so as a business, the BBC, I'm going to say, in certain respects, and this is a bit, I don't know if it's controversial, but I think they've stopped giving enough to everybody. They're giving a lot to one particular world viewpoint and not a lot to everyone. And even when actually they're mandated to do so by the arrangement they're in with the license fee payers.
I think it's really interesting. I think, effectively what you're saying is, if you stop listening to your customer, maybe as you say, they potentially were arrogant that maybe at the beginning they didn't need to listen. They could set the agenda, they could set the process, and the customer would come to them. But if we look over the last 5 years, suddenly the customer has gained the power. And actually, as a consumer, we want what we want to come to us. We want to set the agenda. We want to say how we want to consume. If you look at, I don't know, banking or retail, these whole industries have had to change the way that they deliver their services.
Kicking and screaming for many of them, yeah.
Kicking and screaming, and actually banking and retail have done so. And those organisations that have survived are the ones that have moved online, have moved to 24/7, have embraced AI. And I think I'm interested to hear from yourself if you think maybe that arrogance has literally just come from not listening, and therefore
I think you've nailed it. I don't want to be seen to badmouth this incredible institution that we have in this country that we should be very, very proud of. I'm just pointing out that for a number of different reasons that they're failing to. It's a one-way conversation with the BBC, although I would say it was. They're definitely changing. There's definitely a mood shift, and I don't know where that's coming from, but I'm here for it, and I think it's really, really important because they have to do well. They have to be supported, and I think we're going to be okay. But let me give you some examples of what I'm talking about in my world, and then it might relate to that. And it's not just the BBC, it's all mainstream media. And you're absolutely right. I think you've articulated it really, really well. They didn't have to respond. I mean, to actually affect some form of input into analog television when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s. I was born in 69, so I was watching television that I can remember in the 70s, let alone the 80s. I had to write a letter. So I'd write a letter to Blue Peter and I'd say, hey, Biddy Baxter, she was the editor of Blue Peter. My name's Jason and I did this at school today and I think I should have a Blue Peter badge. And I would often, back then I would often get a reply. So to be fair, they were listening there. But my point is that it wasn't a balanced two-way conversation, right? So, snail mail would take a long time to get there. And if you got a reply, it's not a great way of affecting change. Now we're in an instant environment where so a newsreader can say something and they can get hit, or the station can get hit with a barrage of opinion instantly on social media. And I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. I don't applaud all social media. I don't think it should be a kind of, an echo chamber for all kinds of crazy ideas. But I am an advocate of free and open use of social media for adults. And that's one of the reasons why, so that you can actually push back. And so now if they're not listening, they're still not listening, that's a problem. Because you could be forgiving and say in the 80s and the 90s, it was tricky for them to get a real grasp. And they would do these sort of statistical polls on viewing figures and all the rest of it, but and the people would have boxes and they'd use some stats to work out what that meant in terms of the viewing figures, but it was very hit and miss. Now it's absolutely mathematically accurate. They know exactly who's watching and they can talk to them in real time if they're live, so. But I was going to give you an example from my own world. So I'm making a movie, and the way I'm making it is through the crowdfunding platform Kickstarter, right? And so we funded the movie on Kickstarter. And for anyone listening and watching, it doesn't quite know what that is. It's a crowdfunding platform. I say to you, hey, tell you what, if you buy a T-shirt with the logo of the movie on it, and I'll make it look snazzy, for a little bit more than it actually costs, I'll use the extra to make the movie, right? So I might sell a T-shirt for 40 quid, try and get it made for 15 quid, whatever. And then I'll have some money to make my film. And I did that with 833 backers. That was the amount of people that backed the movie. Many of them putting in a lot more than a T-shirt, I can tell you that. And so recently I realized that for various reasons, keeping to the promise I'd initially made and that people had backed, one of the pledges that they bought was the opportunity to download the movie. So they could download the movie when it's finished in August of this year, and they could watch it on their device, and they could have it for life, right? And then I started to realize a year down the line, actually, that might be tricky for all kinds of reasons that I won't bore you with. So I then suggested in a mail out to everyone, tell you what, we've decided that we're going to go with a stream instead of a download. So when you get to experience the movie in August, it'll be a stream. You can still access it as many times as you want, for as long as you want, but it's going to be a stream. Instantly, I got pushback. Instantly, my phone lit up with 833 people. Obviously, a relatively small percentage is still a lot of people. So let's say 20, 25 people. Bang, 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 bang. And then I chatted to my assistant, and the next day, not the next day, a few days later, I did a new update, and my update went like this. What did I say? I can't remember. It was a funny line that I wrote, and it was, basically I said, okay, you're right, we're wrong, we're going to give you a download. And I heard the words of my dad, my salesman dad. The customer is always right. And I thought to myself, it's going to cost me a little bit more money. There's some issues around DRM and copyright protection. But I said I was going to give them a download. Enough of them clearly feel that's not just something they want, but they're a little bit miffed about it. I'm not having that. I wouldn't be making the movie without these people. Take the hit, Jace, give them a download. And I got a lovely, warm response. So, again, I would argue in that instance, and your other guests on CX Voices and your sponsor and the people that watch this know a lot more about this than I do, but I'm going to wager that I've just brought those people even more on side, and that the community, the community that is the Kickstarter supporters, have now been galvanized around a simple act of just giving the customer what they want.
Something goes wrong and you're given a voice to be able to kick back, and actually, as you say, it brings you closer to that person. You go through anything in life where something goes wrong, and you're able to go through it together, and actually you see a change together, and you're closer as a community. If you hadn't had the ability to go out and get their feedback immediately, then I'm guessing it could have actually had a huge impact on your journey for the next step of what you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we all talk about community, don't we? And how that is the new force that you need to really understand and focus if you want to be successful. And really the difference between an audience and a community is that an audience, they can applaud. And in a stand-up club, they can kind of get involved a little bit. But a community is absolutely involved at a kind of granular level in everything that you do.
And I think that's what every organisation is aiming for. If you look across all industries, people are wanting to change their customers into just customers to a community of people who believe in them, who are there walking through life with them. And that's what makes people sticky. That's what gives, if your customers are experiencing a community or a family or however you want to refer to it, that is when you're winning. And clearly that is maybe where the world of television hasn't managed to achieve.
Well, for our demographic, now this is interesting. The other reason that I would wager that they're having an issue in, we'll call them the mainstream media, but I mean the mainstream now, if you ask me, is YouTube and Instagram, and for a certain demographic, TikTok. For my mom's generation, she loves television. And I just did because she's less mobile than you and I, bless her, and she grew up with it, so she has a sense of loyalty and a kind of shared understanding of what the different channels represent and the various IPs like what's it called? Oh my goodness, the one, the Traitors or Traitors, whatever it's called. Yeah, she loves it. And I had a lovely experience with her at Christmas watching whatever the latest series of that show is, and really enjoying it with her. So yeah, there's a demographic element to this as well. Television is still serving that demographic really well and giving them what they want. They're just not doing it so well with us.
You're right, and I think that is maybe the worry, because as that demographic does get older, and then we go into the various generations. We were talking about this on my last podcast actually, about the differences in how generations through the years communicate. You go from Generation Y, probably yourself, all the way through to well, no, actually you would have been Gen X, and then Y is millennials.
I would get very confused around this.
Effectively, you're getting to the point where if the baby boomers are kind of leaving it behind at television, and then I don't even have a television license as a millennial. I've got my phone. I can.
Have you had some snotty letters?
I always get snotty letters.
Seriously, from the BBC, and are they suggesting? And do they suggest? Do they very convincingly suggest that you've committed a crime?
Absolutely, they're convinced that you're committing a crime.
I'm no marketeer, okay, but I'm guessing that's not what they teach you at marketing school, is it? Maybe they try and sell you on the problem that this product they're trying to sell, in this instance the BBC, on the problem they're going to solve for you. For example, like, wouldn't it be great if the BBC sent me a letter tomorrow, right, rather than saying, we know you're watching television, and I mean, I'm not going to paraphrase him because I literally can't remember, but it was the scariest, most horrible accusatory letter ever. And if it wasn't for the fact that I love a good argument and I want them to come to my house, I wouldn't be rude, but I would be very playfully sarcastic. Then if I was like someone like my mom, I might get a little bit scared about that.
The way they word it is as if they know that you are watching television, and it makes you second guess yourself. I think
exactly.
So
we were watching something the other day, and it derived from an ITV series, right? So I'm watching it on Netflix, or I'm watching it on something I can't remember, and Claire went, are we allowed to watch this? And I was like, yes, we've paid for it. It's not difficult, but they make it sound complicated. Now, all I'm saying is that's a problem. All of that is a big problem. So here's the scenario. I get a letter tomorrow from the BBC, and it said something like, I don't know, something like, something about England. You don't have to be the best football fan in the world to know England need your support, right? And the best way, I'm trying to solve a problem, the best way to support your country, and I'm like, no, oh, that's the Dam Busters, but you know what I mean. And my old dad's turning his grave and thinking, Jason, your country needs you. And I'm like, I'm up for it. And then it says something like, for a small fee, you can experience, I don't know what it is, 3 channels of incredible football action, and you can shout England to victory. I'm there.
You're there.
Rather than you little reprobate. We know you've been dirty. We've been watching you. We're coming to get you. I mean, what's going on?
How not to prioritise customer experience?
Completely.
Because you're creating an experience of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the HMRC have changed their tune. I don't know if you've noticed, right? I used to ring them up, and it was like going to see the headmaster. It was worse, actually. And now they're like, hi, how you doing? And then they'll start to go into what I owe them, and they'll say, I want to make sure that you're covering your essential bills, and it's really important that you look after you. And are you experiencing any financial difficulty? And then if I said, which I did not recently, but a couple of years back? Actually, yes, because COVID hit my business really hard. It turns out being a content creator isn't necessary when the world's running away from a pandemic, right? And so I really didn't work for 2 years or something like that. And so my answer was, yeah, it's been really difficult. And I remember having a kind of heart-to-heart with the HMRC person, right? So if they can get it, oh my goodness, the BBC can, with all of that incredible content that they've got to sell you.
You're right. It ultimately comes down to actually caring. Do you care about the people who are consuming your service? And I think if industries aren't going to understand that and move forward with that and realizing that it can no longer be about you setting the agenda, you have to care about the agenda of your customers, then really that there is, as we're talking about today.
Well, what's our agenda with regard to this? What's our agenda? You seem to suggest, and I would definitely agree with you, I think what you were saying was that you like the idea of being able to watch content when you want to watch it.
Absolutely.
So don't you think that arguably the one broadcasting institution on planet Earth where you could faithfully say they have got a golden archive, right? Like David Attenborough, for example, right? You know, all the comedy, all the beautiful the stunning dramas, and the soap operas, and all the the radio. I mean, my goodness, right? Couldn't they just sell me on? I don't know what they call it now. You'll have to forgive me because I also don't have a TV license. I have it for one. I've got another house which we have, which we rent out. We've got some renters in it, and it's in your neck of the woods. And so we used to do Airbnb, so we've got a TV license for that. Actually, I'm just reminding myself, I don't need a TV license for that one either, because I'm not doing Airbnb anymore. Anyway, but I don't have one for it because we never watch it. And it's also a point of, it's because of the way that they spoke to me in those letters. That's why I'm not doing it, right? But if they said to me, again, solving a problem for me, saying, are you aware, or as you know, or David Attenborough, we are celebrating the life and achievements of David Attenborough here at the BBC over the next 12 months. And we have, 1,000 hours of incredible content. You know what I mean? Like, we know that you like to watch content when you want, and that's what our iPlayer thingy is for. All you do is this, that, and the other, bubble. And I'd be like, okay, I'm in. I mean, I'm selling it to myself right now. In fact, there are lots of reasons that I have. I hope I'm not shouting. I've realised my microphone, I use it for doing this funky music DJ show that I do on a Friday for Street Sounds Radio. And I purposely have it over-modulating, so it's got that punch to it. And I've just realised I'm shouting, and it's probably going to be really over-modulated, so I apologise.
Your excitement for customer experience, you can't hold it back.
Anyway, I forget what I was going to say, but you know my point. My point is customer service, solving a problem, repitch it. Don't use guilt. It doesn't work. Like I'm really into health and fitness. You know, my wife is a nutritional therapist, and she has to quote, sell, end quote people on health stuff, right? And it's never about guilting them, is it? It's always about what it can do for them, and where they'll be in 3 months, 6 months.
Absolutely, it has to be about what are the outcomes that they're looking for, and what can you do as a business to change, adapt, do what needs to do. I mean, ultimately for television, as you've said, people have moved to other platforms, not because they don't want to stop consuming information, they just want to experience it differently. And so they've moved to those platforms that have made it accessible, and yet still television is making it accessible. It's just that unfortunately in many cases they're missing that attention now, because the attention has gone to other platforms. The customers are still there consuming.
I'm going to use the AI, right? What is iPlayer now called? Did it change its name, Katie? Am I going off on a tangent here?
I have no idea. I would love to know the answer to that. I don't think so. Has it?
It's still the iPlayer. You're right. It's still the BBC iPlayer. Yeah, maybe it's the radio one that changed. Yeah. They've got that. They've got that platform. They just need to sell it to me, by which I mean, or you, someone who has chosen to not have a TV license for some pretty good reasons. They need to use that platform to make me understand that my lifestyle intersects beautifully with the iPlayer.
Yeah, you're right. The customers are still there. They're just in different places. And I think that's something that applies to all industries. And it's something that everybody is trying to fight for to keep going in this crazy, fast-paced world that we currently find ourselves
It's nuts. Have you seen the new episodic structure on Instagram? That's really interesting.
I haven't.
And sometimes these startups, Meta, a startup. What am I talking about? But these Silicon Valley new media institutions, they are very impressive. They seem it's obviously because they have untold resources and they attract very talented people, but they do seem to consistently come up with some great ideas. They've just come up with this idea where you can make some content and then you can either break it up into 5 episodes or you can just record it episodically within the app. Now I think it's a really clever idea, and I hadn't thought of it. I thought in general terms around making stuff, stripping out stuff that I do, like at Christmas I might do like, was it 12 days of gadgets or something? So I'll do Christmas present ideas maybe in November over 12 days or whatever it is, right? So it's not a completely unique concept, but they've made it structurally part of the app now. I'm really interested in this. And have you noticed the new vertical video trend where people are doing things like they're making drama inside their cafe? So, a couple of people that own a cafe will use their staff to make a kind of episodic drama, like a soap opera. So not just documentary content, which is effectively what, live posts about your business are, but actually like scripted content where people are acting and stuff and funny things happen. And I love it. It's so diverse and so interesting. So, there is another reason let's throw that into the mix. The other reason that mainstream is struggling is because the other platforms are so good at innovating. They're so agile. I mean, look at TikTok. Who'd have thought TikTok? I mean, I remember when I first got TikTok and I put it on and it was dreadful. I mean, it was just video after video of the absolute diametric opposite of what I like, right? It was ridiculous. It was people in lorries going meh, 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 and playing tunes with their horn. And then I can't even tell you what some of the other stuff was because it was revolting, right? It was so weird. And then, of course, within about 3 days, the algorithm started to work out what I hovered over. And then it started to look a bit more like the inside of my head. And now it's like a friend. I can just sit back and I can bomb through it and I can shop on it, which is mad. That whole thing is mad.
Let's just hover there because I think the fact that this industry has managed to effectively is gradually taking over retail. If you look at, I mean, forcing retail now to fight for what they stand for and what they're offering, even as shops have moved to online, suddenly they've got this whole new media platform that's vying for their customers' attention.
Yeah, it's absolutely it's phenomenal. I mean, I use this phrase at the beginning of this interview. I'm going to use it again: the democratization of everything. That's what we're experiencing, and trust me, folks, more is going to be democratized. It's happening at an exponential rate, and it is astounding. And I'll give you an example. I gave you an example. I think I mentioned it earlier that I'm doing my own 5.1 sound mix, right? So I couldn't have done that even 3 years ago in a meaningful way unless I had 200 grand. And so we start out where you've got to hire a crew and you've got to hire a huge venue and lights and and a camera and a professional sound rig and all the rest of it, right? To make a short movie, a 10-minute movie. And then when you've got to edit it, you've got to edit it on spools of film. Katie, I'm old enough to tell you that the first experience I ever had of editing was 16mm celluloid with a razor. And I worked on a radio station in Bristol while I was still at uni as a kind of work experience. And I was editing radio items, again, from tape, splicing tape. I mean, now you could literally shoot a very financially successful and very well received short film, even a feature, arguably, on iPhones, and edit it on your laptop, and do the 5.1 mix, and God knows what else coming down the line. And yes, we haven't talked about AI yet. We need to get onto that, and maybe this is the juncture that you need, because AI has played a very important role in my film. My film is about AI, but in a subtle way, we've used AI to solve some really interesting problems for us. So that's part of this democratization process. But it's interesting, isn't it, that we're you and I are now in the AI pushback phase. That's been quite interesting. But anyway, I don't want to preempt that section of the chat.
No, it's brilliant. And I think let's just think about on the AI side for a minute, because I know you've said that you're obviously an avid user yourself. You're interested in the technology. It's a huge thing in customer experience. You know, as we look at various industries that are now working to understand how do we bring in AI, how do we use it for the best effect, how do we comply, how do we consider governance, all of that side of things, a massive topic. But just talk to us for a little bit around how it is shaping what you're delivering to your own consumers through your movie and what you're doing there.
Okay, so yeah, it is an interesting one, you know, because when I started the movie, I mean, literally, when I started editing the movie, you couldn't produce video that was usable. So you'd let's say that I was trying to produce you right now as we look at you in this video part of the podcast, right? So it's a lady with blonde hair and there's a diffused background. Well, the diffused background would be a little bit random. It wouldn't necessarily, this is like 18 months ago, it wouldn't have been reliable, right? And then there would have been something uncanny valley about you. There would have been something that was very AI about you. And then you might glitch, or your eye might do something strange, or your teeth might look phenomenally perfect. And the lip sync, the lip sync was probably okay 18 months ago, right? Okay, good. Cut to, also, you would have been 1080p, right? So, and you would have been 4 seconds. So now, I forget how many seconds I can do, but I'm more up to like 8 to 12 seconds. I'm in 4K, and the assets in the background, for you, it would, in my instance, in my movie, it might be a very brief clip which we would then comp onto a real shot that we've shot ourselves of a television screen, and it might be the TV in the background of a canteen, and we want a news item on there for that sort of foreshadowing that we're all very good at picking up on when we watch movies, right? So you'll use the newsreader to say something that it's almost in the background, but as a cinema goer, you're like, oh, hang on a minute, I reckon that's relevant. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, yes, I've got to hire an actress. I've got to, if this actress wants to get some stuff for her show reel, I could, in good faith, get her to do the movie for free and give her a credit and give her some material for her show reel. I've still got to get her to Cornwall. She might live in London. I've got to put her up for at least one night. I've got to feed her. And on that kind of budget, that's a lot of money. That's 250, 300 quid right there, right? And that's if this person does it for free, right? And so, and I've got to get a green screen, I've got to light it, and I've got to find a space to do it in, right? I could do that shot in, 5 minutes, you know, because it takes a while for it to render it at that quality. And most importantly, I can go back into it and I can say, actually, could you give her a red blouse, or could you, could you have a weather map in the background on a bank of televisions? You see what I mean? You get absolutely incredible flexibility. Now, we have a bit of a policy on our movie. We're not about to fly the flag for AI killing human creativity. So we've used it very sparingly, and we've generally, it pops up with a bit of an analog glitch, and it's just there momentarily, and it's in the background, all right? To get us out of a hole and to help us, because we have no money. We have no money. I am so in debt on this movie. I'm using my own personal bank account to fund everything that we do from this point on, and we've still got plenty of T-shirts, DVDs, artwork, Christ knows what to send to people, and we've got to print 350 odd Blu-rays and God knows what else. So I need the help, and that's what AI is providing.
What I love about your story throughout, whenever you talk about your movie, is that you are thinking about your supporters, your funders, your customers. You know, everything that you're saying. It may cost us more money, but I am here to make the customer happy, and really that it brings us back to the whole point of this conversation. You know, if that is your aim, if ultimately you are here to listen to make a difference to those consumers, and that's exactly what you're doing in all of your work, and that's really why I wanted you to come on, because you are somebody that really does believe in customer experience, understanding it.
I think it's just a win-win, but I'm going to say it also includes not using AI, and I know that won't be a shock to people, but it needs to be stated that if your customers have a problem with AI, and in my world, the world of the arts, which is where I'm sitting right now with my producer hat on, AI's got a bad name. It's got a bad reputation because it's putting people out of work, or it's threatening to put people out of work, and the output that's coming from pure AI interaction, certainly in the movie and content creation realm, isn't always very good. In fact, I'd argue it's generally not great. AI works best when used moderately, as a supporting framework or an asset or an element within a real world context. Right? My daughter is an illustrator, right? And I think it's fair to say she's anti-AI. Like, she just she has no time for it. And I get it. I totally get it. And I also see, to get back to your customer experience focus, right? A great opportunity, a brilliant opportunity to give your customers what they want. If they don't want AI, make a point of not giving them AI. Maybe use AI if it helps you in the back end, right? In terms of your efficiency, so that you can remain in business, you can be efficient, and you can help your customers, right? But if what they want is a human-to-human interaction, then make a big deal of that. And the best example has got to be, right, the revolution in the 70s in coffee machines. Katie, you're far too young to remember this, but in the 70s, that's when we invented all the kind of automated coffee grinding things and all that stuff, which is very normal now. And suddenly you could get a pretty decent cup of coffee in the hotel foyer, your Trust House 40, whatever it was in 1979, and it would be a bean to cup type thing, right? And what actually happened, and in petrol stations, there was a pushback, and the pushback has now resulted in me every morning, this morning being no exception, queuing up for the best part of 7 to 10 minutes, while a bloke with tattoos and a beard makes me a coffee. It takes ages to do it, and it's all part of the experience, and I want it. And I get there early. I get to the shop early so that I've got a proper cup of coffee made by a human being, and I walk all the way back up the hill to start my day. Now, that's a great example, isn't it, of how the analog human-to-human experience is very valuable.
100%, and I think the industry is already seeing that pushback with AI. If we look across the industry at the amount of failed projects where AI just hasn't been adopted, and actually people have tried to implement the likes of chatbots, the likes of various ways of communication through AI, and are now already going back and reintroducing humans because people just do not want that experience. And I think ultimately it comes down to the AI has to be there to support the human. And you're right. It's about what do your customers want to experience, and that may be different for different generations, for different industries. But you have to lead with the customer. And in many cases, people haven't. They've jumped all in with 2 feet with the AI experience, and it hasn't delivered what people need. And it's exactly the same with your coffee analogy. It's gone backwards.
Yeah. The human in the chain is critically important. And again, I remember speaking about this even as recently as a year ago, and it was quite a radical idea. But now it's just obvious because we've dipped our toes in the AI waters, and it's extraordinary. But we know that it's not. Certainly, as a business, and I'm a very small business, I'm not ready to wholesale adopt AI, for example, to start editing my videos. It can do some pretty cool things. For example, connecting Claude to Adobe products from Photoshop to Premiere is quite interesting, and you can get some interesting results. But what, edit my movie? You've got to be kidding. Having said that, though, the movie, as I've explained to you, 833 backers, they all want different sizes of t-shirts and this thing signed and that Blu-ray. I want the DVD instead of a Blu-ray. Wow, Claude in that environment is a gift, because I can connect it. They're called connectors, as you probably know, within the Anthropic Claude platform. You can connect it to Gmail, and I use Gmail. So I can make sure that everyone communicates with me on the Kickstarter through Gmail, and I can then point Claude at Gmail, and it can pass all my information, and I can say to it, oh, how many people wanted a DVD? And it'll go 47. And I'll go, great. How many people want a Blu-ray? And it'll say 300 or 450. And yeah, the one thing I would say, though, that the hallucinations are real. Like, the AI hallucination problem is a big problem. So if you've been thinking, if you've ever had the feeling that the AI gets stuff wrong a lot, it's not just you. It is a very significant issue, and it is scaling up alongside the good stuff. So, you know, when we're exponentially jumping every 18 months, you know, if you're an advocate of Moore's law, you know, these little, you know, jumps on the chessboard in innovation, speed and output, that also goes the same for the amount of wrong answers. And that's a real issue that large language models are struggling with and that they need to resolve. I mean, I do a quiz on a Sunday night. It's basically a pub quiz, but I do it online. And it's called Way of the Exploding Show. It's great. It's like a pop trivia show about 80s and 90s pop culture, right? And I get my quiz questions, which are about things like the Nintendo Entertainment System or the Sega Mega Drive or Terminator, or some facts about Sigourney Weaver, or, you know, 80s and 90s, pretty hard stuff, right? Because my audience are pretty geeky. And out of every 10, we only have 10 questions each week. If I ask the AI, be it OpenAI or Claude or Grok, whatever, to do me 10 questions, 2 of the questions out of 10 will be completely wrong, factually incorrect. But here's the thing, they won't look it, Katie. They'll look real. And it's only my little inner voice that says, I don't think the Double Dragon brothers both had black hair. It'll be something like that. That's an arcade machine from the 80s, Katie. But it'll be something like that. And it'll be really subtle. And even if I ask it to check itself, it'll still get it wrong.
Yeah, it's absolutely convinced that its truth is reality when it's actually just completely made up.
Yeah, that's the problem. Now, that's fine for my trivia quiz, right? But what if you're sequencing, you know, protein strings or whatever in the search for cancer, or you're involved in pharmaceutical design? I don't know, and someone that knows more about it than I could probably tell us in the comments. But no one's given me any evidence yet, or I've not come across any to suggest that hallucinations don't happen within that environment as well. If an AI is a large language model and it's looking at historical data, it will hallucinate. And it's a bit of a problem. All good reasons to keep the human in the chain.
100%. Right, Jason, we are going to finish it there, but thank you so much.
Brilliant.
It's been such a fascinating conversation. I love how we can cover everything from the death of television all the way through to Moore's law, only with you. This is what
it's all a credit to you, Katie. It was easy. I can't believe that we've got to the end of it already. I was enjoying every minute of it.
Thank you for joining CX Voices. We will see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.